Tough news for Ukraine from Washington. Donald Trump gave Volodymyr Zelensky a few days to respond to the peace proposal that Steven Witkoff brought from Moscow. Essentially, this is a new ultimatum for Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, Trump's envoys are pressuring Zelensky, demanding a quick response to his peace agreement, which involves territorial concessions from Ukraine in exchange for absolutely vague security guarantees from the United States. According to the publication, Trump's team wants to achieve a ceasefire with Russia by Christmas. But it's important to note that similar insider reports have previously appeared in Axios as well. They wrote that Zelensky is facing increasing pressure from the United States, demanding that he accept major territorial losses, and also that the United States is trying to drive a wedge between Zelensky and European leaders, because then it will be easier to put pressure on him. But today, after a meeting in Europe, Zelensky stated that Ukraine, together with its European partners, has finalized a peace plan to end the war and is ready to send the document to the United States in the near future. At the same time, Finnish President Alexander Stubb said that 3 separate documents are currently being discussed, and we will talk about exactly which ones in this episode. My name is Alexei Pechi, let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and write any comment under this episode. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So the Financial Times writes that Donald Trump gave Volodymyr Zelensky a few days to respond to the peace proposal. They say that's exactly why he repeatedly claims that Zelensky supposedly hasn't even read his peace proposal yet. As the publication writes, Trump's envoys are pressuring Zelensky, demanding a quick response to his peace agreement, which involves serious territorial concessions from Ukraine in exchange for vague security guarantees from the United States, which Washington suggests should only be discussed after a peace agreement is reached. And now Trump wants to achieve a ceasefire with the Russians by Christmas. And now there's pressure on Zelensky. Clearly, it's only increasing. Let me remind you that earlier, Axios reported that after weeks of intense diplomacy, Ukrainians still believe that some aspects of the current United States plan benefit Moscow, and that the United States is putting much more pressure on Zelensky than on the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. An American official denied this to Axios, emphasizing that the United States is also putting pressure on Putin to soften his demands in this war. But in the meantime, Zelensky met this week with a whole array of the most influential leaders of Europe, and they assure that Ukraine doesn't need to give in to either Putin or Trump. And there are already results from these European meetings. Today, President Zelensky announced that Ukraine, together with its European partners, has finalized a peace plan to end the war and is ready to send this document to Washington in the near future. Zelensky said that today there was a discussion with Ukraine's negotiating team about the results of their work in London at the level of national security advisors from European Union countries. Quote, "We are working very actively on all the components of possible steps to end the war. The Ukrainian and European components have already been worked out more, and we are ready to present them to our partners from Russia in America." In addition, Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine will be ready to send the revised documents to the United States in the near future. Quote, "We are interested currently and constantly in contact with America, and as the partners on the negotiation teams rightly note, everything depends on whether Russia is ready to take effective steps to stop the bloodshed and prevent the war from flaring up again." Zelensky developed the peace plan with Europeans due to concerns about European security. And now Trump, look, there is a unified position of Ukraine, and Europe and US, part of the West, should join it and not, grovel before some bald dictator like Putin. And it's important to note here that Donald Trump himself once again repeated the other day that Zelensky hasn't read his peace agreement, and supposedly it's Zelensky who is disrupting the peace process. Moreover, Trump stated that Zelensky is just using the war as an excuse not to hold elections. Trump said they're using the war as an excuse to avoid elections. But I think the Ukrainian people should have that choice, and maybe President Volodymyr Zelensky will win. I don't know who will win, but they haven't had elections for a long time. You know, they talk about democracy, but at some point it's no longer democracy. And here I should note that the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin took advantage of Ukraine's inability to hold elections to declare Zelensky illegitimate. Trump is doing the same thing, and here it's important to understand that holding a nationwide vote under conditions of mass population displacement, under conditions of occupied territory, under conditions of active enemy shelling, and the presence of millions of Ukrainians abroad is not impossible or illegal according to the Constitution of Ukraine. But in light of all these rumors that Zelensky is being pressured to agree to concessions before Christmas, it sounds very alarming. Here's a quote from Donald Trump from a recent interview with Politico. Well, Zelensky will have to pull himself together and start coming to terms with what's happening. When you're losing, it's because you're losing. Our closest ally, the United States, is basically saying we lost. But when asked about Donald Trump Jr.'s recent claim that the United States might abandon Ukraine, Trump gave a vague answer. This statement is not entirely true, but it's not entirely false either, Trump said. But let's get back to Trump's demands for Ukraine. The negotiations focused on two issues. Currently, Russia's demands are that Ukraine cede the entire Donbas region, including areas its forces do not control, and Ukraine's request is for reliable security guarantees from the United States to prevent future Russian aggression. Moreover, Zelensky has already emphasized that these guarantees must be ratified by the United States Congress. This isn't just a piece of paper that Trump signs, then Trump leaves, and it's no longer valid. No, it needs to be ratified by the parliament. But here's what Axios writes today, quote, "The United States proposal has worsened from Kyiv's perspective after Trump's advisors Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner held a 5-hour meeting with Putin at the Kremlin last week. Witkoff and Kushner apparently wanted to get a clear yes from Zelensky when they discussed the plan with him during a 2-hour phone call on Saturday. It felt like the United States was trying in various ways to convince us of Russia's desire to seize the entire Donbas and that the Americans wanted Zelensky to accept all of this during the phone call," one of the Ukrainian officials said. And here Trump's team also tried, to sow discord not only between Zelensky and the European leaders. I'll discuss this later, including between Zelensky and his team. On Sunday, Trump said that Zelensky's negotiators actually like the United States plan, but Zelensky himself doesn't read it, so Trump is disappointed by this. This was a hint that, look, the whole team, all Ukrainians want to support Trump's peace plan, and only Zelensky, you see, doesn't even read it, so that's why he's to blame for everything. After that, it became known that after Witkoff's visit to Moscow, the United States proposal included tougher conditions than previous versions. On issues such as territory and control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and it left key questions about security guarantees unanswered. When did the first leaks appear that American negotiators were forcing Zelensky to agree to capitulation? American officials began to claim that they were also putting pressure on Putin to make him agree to some of Ukraine's demands. Well, in fact, when Trump administration officials were asked, "So, listen, what concessions did Putin actually make? Which Ukrainian demands did Putin accept?" These officials couldn't answer. They say we pressured Putin too, even if it achieved nothing, so there's no reason to complain. We pressured Zelensky, but we pressured Putin as well. So, when the Americans couldn't sway Zelensky, the next day, the president of Ukraine met in London with the leaders of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany to present a joint position on Trump's plan. After that, Macron publicly stated, quote, "We have quite a few cards in our hands. We know who this message targets, especially after Zelensky's visits to London, Brussels, and now Rome." The Trump administration stated that they consider all these meetings of Zelensky with Europeans as a useless attempt to buy time in the negotiations on Donald Trump's peace plan. Quote from Axios. Ukrainian officials said that in their opinion the United States is trying to distance Zelensky from European leaders in order to put more effective pressure on him. Zelensky cannot make such radical decisions without consulting his key allies. While the Trump administration is pressuring Zelensky, demanding quick action from him, the Europeans are advising caution and patience. This dynamic frustrates some people in the White House who consider the Europeans the main obstacle to a deal. As a result, today Zelensky announced that together with the Europeans they have finalized the peace plan and are ready to present it to Trump, who is eager to hand over Ukraine as soon as possible. The Europeans, they're not in a hurry, are they? At the same time, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, a close friend of Trump, stated that peace for Ukraine is closer than it has ever been since the start of the full-scale war. There is a discussion of 3 separate documents based on what Trump originally proposed. The first is a framework document, which, as of yesterday's conversation among European leaders, is a 20-point plan. And here's a sensation, I'll quote Stubb. The original 28-point plan by Trump contained elements of a future European security structure that, in our opinion, were absolutely unacceptable for Europe. So, in this Trump peace plan, the United States was abandoning not only Ukraine, but also Europe. I think we still have a lot to learn from this 28-point peace plan. The second document, which was discussed between the administration of President Donald Trump, Ukrainian and European officials, concerned security guarantees for Ukraine. And this is where the game began, which proves that Ukraine should not rush under any circumstances. President Sauli Niinistö of Finland made a distinction between strict security guarantees and security arrangements. He added that the latter involved the so-called coalition of the willing, including modern Italy and not reapply? Professor Aikar, expect many loud statements and accusations in the coming days. So friends, write in the comments what you expect from the negotiations and what Donald Trump is trying to achieve. Friends, if you find this episode interesting, if you think my work is necessary, you can support our YouTube channel with your donation or a paid subscription on platforms like Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and all the details are in the description of this video. It says there, support Alexei Pichi's channel. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.